Welcome, everybody. Merry Christmas. This is another episode of In the Paint, a video series by OU Insider and the Rivals Network about all things OU men's hoops. My name is Jesse Crittenden. I am joined, as always, by Brody Lusk. Brody, it's Monday afternoon. No basketball until Sunday. Got football. We got the bowl game later this week, but it's really just Christmas.
Yep.
And for the next couple of days, you got any Christmas plans?
Just visiting family, you know the usuals. So should be fun going down to Tulsa, Oklahoma for the next couple days. Um, but yeah, I mean, sounds like your Christmas plans will involve the bowl game, huh?
I will say, this is my fourth year covering football, and this is the first year I'm not leaving on Christmas Day. I'm leaving on the 26th. So it's not Christmas Day. It's
Yeah.
basically the same thing, but it's not Christmas Day. So I'm
Uh,
chalking that up as a win.
yep.
Um, Brody, since we last spoke, OU has won three more games since we last spoke because we spoke before the Bedlam game. So they not only beat Oklahoma State handedly, but this men's team goes to Charlotte, beats then number 24 Michigan in what was an incredible game that they really had no business winning, kind of. And then they easily coast against Central Arkansas last night, but 12-0, Brody, 12th in the AP poll as of today, 11th in the coaches poll. They have won three games since we last spoke, but I think the biggest thing, obviously, is that Michigan game. I know it was a few days ago, but Jeremiah Fears goes for 30. OU finds a way to come from behind. What stood out about that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to start with Jeremiah Fears. I mean, that shot he hit at the end, that's the type of shot that you see someone who could very well be a lottery pick hit. Like, I think everyone kind of knew that Jeremiah Fears was a special player, but it's like when you see him hit that type of a shot, that's when you're like, okay, he has it. And so I think that stood out, but also I think Duke Miles looked great down the stretch of that game. I believe 15 of his 17 points in that Michigan game occurred in the second half, and he was playing really well. But like you said, they didn't have any business winning that game. Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden really dominated that game for the most part. But then you got the heroics of Jeremiah Fears, and you've got Duke Miles making plays down the stretch, and Jalen Moore fouls out, and they find a way to win. And that's what good teams do. They find a way to win.
I think everything you just said, and the last time we talked about how there are some signs that this year could be different under Porter Moser. That this fourth year could be the one, right? But you still had to see it. I think everything that we talked about and everything in terms of what can you point to that this year can be different, it's that game because it's not only a win against a big time team. Let's not forget same Jumpman Invitational last year against North Carolina, a game they lost by 10. This one they find a way to win 86 or 87-86, but it's Jeremiah Fears going for 30 and hitting the game winning or the game winner, 4-point play. It's Duke Miles, like you mentioned, supplemental scoring. Um, I just don't think that's a game that the last 3 years, the version of this team the last 3 years, I just don't think that's a game they figure out to win, Brody, because it's not just Jeremiah Fears proving that he's different, but that's a game that looked like it was heading towards that. Hey, good effort, but they
Yeah.
lose by 8, right? They lose by 6. They find a way to win this. I mean, I don't know, bro. I don't know about you, Brody, but to me, that's the game you can point to say this year's team can be different.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And Michigan's a pretty good team. Top 25 team, but they might be like a top 10 bad matchup for Oklahoma. Like the two 7-footers down there, it was a problem. But it like you said, it felt like this was going to be a game where they lose by about 10 points, and you're like, well, there's some positives sprinkled in there. But no, they find a way to pull it out. And to me, one thing that has kind of stood out to me over all of non-conference play is Oklahoma needs two out of their three guards to step up in those big games if they want to win. And you had Jeremiah Fears do that, and then you also had Duke Miles do that. So to me, what I look at this game that kind of shows me that this team is different than any of the teams in the past, it's the scoring depth, right? You had Jeremiah Fears go for 30, Duke Miles go for 17, Jalen Moore had a nice game. They have all these, four different guys who can score quite a bit on any given night. And so I think that is definitely something that points to this team being different because, last year the North Carolina game was very similar in a lot of ways. The first half kind of reminded me of that game,
Mhm.
but this team just they found a way to win.
It's a good, really interesting point about the scoring depth, and particularly, when you talk about those three guards, it's Jeremiah Fears, Duke Miles, Kobe Elvis. Because you look at it, think of it. I mean, in the battle for Atlantis, you had Jeremiah Fears and Kobe Elvis both
Yeah,
go for more than 20 in a crucial game there. And you mentioned, and as much as we talk about Jeremiah Fears, and if there is a difference maker, a true difference maker for this team, it's him.
sure.
Obviously, I mean, even since we last spoke, he has claimed the top spot in scoring for this team. He's averaging 18 a game. He continues to score. I mean, he's had 10 or more in every game this year. That included the Central Arkansas game where he had 15 in the second half, I believe. But I want to talk about Duke Miles because that's a game we mentioned him in our last video, but he's a guy that since we last spoke, you mentioned it's 17 against Michigan, and then Central Arkansas, it's 29 points, effortless 29, where
Yeah,
it's not only effortless, but it's his teammates looking for him to get the ball. It's a couple of heat check shots in there that go in. But when we think about this team the last few years, it was Grant Sherfield. The scoring's got to come from Grant Sherfield. The scoring's got to come from JV McCollum. This year, as much as Jeremiah Fears is going to take a lot of the headlines, I mean, Jalen Moore led this team in scoring the first 10 games. Kobe
yep.
Elvis has had a couple of big games, but now Duke Miles, 29. It's the second most points he scored in a game in his career. And you look at his stats, Brody, on the year. He's the team's third scorer. He's shooting 45% from three.
Ridiculous.
What has stood out to you, not only about his season, but
Yeah.
but these last couple games for him?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, against Central Arkansas, you mentioned the effortless. Yeah, it just felt like nothing was really that forced. I mean, he had the heat check shots, but you're gonna have those. It felt to me like he was letting the game come to him. But with Duke Miles, the biggest thing has been like his ability to attack and get downhill and then actually score at the rim. Against Michigan, he hit some of those tough shots. He's just like fading away in the paint and he's making them. I just think you mentioned Grant Sherfield, Javen McCollum, Milos Uzan. They're all good guards, but none of them to me are like they're gonna attack downhill and get buckets at the rim. It's just to me, Duke Miles has just seemed relentless doing that, and he's really impressed me. His ability to score, and I think he's fit really well in like the what you have three guards: Jeremiah Fears, Duke Miles, Kobe Elvis. It just seems like all three of them are fitting in well, playing together. Playing three guards that can all score. It doesn't always work out, but it has so far for Oklahoma. And even in Bedlam, Kobe Elvis hit like five threes, I want to say. I think it was like 5 for 7 from three. So it's like all three of them, we've seen different glimpses, but the past two games, it has really been Duke Miles, and he has been really impressive, specifically in that game against Central Arkansas.
Brody, now you look ahead, and all of a sudden, I mean, I think we talked in our last video about how that Michigan game was going to be a big test,
Yeah.
obviously, to see where this team's at. They passed it, and now you look, they're 12-0 with one game left against Prairie View A&M. There's an excellent chance for this team to be 13-0 heading into conference play. I don't know. I got asked this on the radio earlier, and I want to ask you the same thing because I think, when you look at past teams, you look at last year's team that finished 20-12, first team out of first team out of the NCAA tournament. With how loaded this SEC field is, and it is loaded. If you can head into it 13-0, that shrinks or that increases your margin of error significantly in terms of making the NCAA tournament. But this schedule it might be the toughest schedule Oklahoma has had in quite some time. When you look at, I mean, Brody, there's four teams that are undefeated left in college basketball. Three of them are in the SEC:
Yeah.
Tennessee and Florida and Oklahoma. Where are you right now in terms of is there are you excited about where this team is? Is there a worry that there's going to be a slip? Is there a middle ground that fans should be at right now? Just where are you at with this team, and where should fans be right now?
Yeah, I said coming into the season, I think Oklahoma goes either 7-11 or 8-10 in conference play, and I really haven't changed that opinion just because how difficult the schedule is. Heading into SEC play, I'm really going to be watching how they fare in those first two games. I think that's going to be pretty telling. You've got Alabama on the road, number 5 Alabama. That could be a top 10 matchup, but then you come home and you play number 13 Texas A&M. So that to me kind of shows how difficult their schedule is. But I think Oklahoma fans should be looking for this team to kind of finish, in the upper middle tier of the SEC. That I think that has to be the expectation. Not expecting this team to finish, in the top 4 or 5 of the SEC. But they should be able to go 8-10 in SEC play. That's my expectation, has been for a while, and I think anything less than that, anything less than 7 would be a disappointment for this team.
I agree, but you think, man, if you can just go 8-10, which is not even
Yeah,
500, but if you go 8-10,
yeah,
if you can go into conference play 13-0, you go 8-10, that's 21-10 in what's probably the best conference in college basketball.
yeah.
That's a pretty good resume, man. And I think you're right. It's not about expecting. I think what you're saying is you can have some expectations with this team now. It's
Yeah.
not about. There's a difference between expecting a top 4 finish in the SEC and a bottom 4 finish, right? Like there's a big middle ground. But I think you can start to have expectations, and I think that Michigan win is one thing you can point to.
Yeah, yeah. I think at this point, this should be an NCAA tournament team. It's fair to expect that. I think last year heading into conference play, we were kind of like, well, this team should do it, but is there a part that's like, you never know what happens in Big 12 play? And I think the discourse among a lot of the fans, at least from what I've seen, is, well, they had success in non-con play last year, but we'll see what happens when they get to conference play. I think you got to look past that because they didn't have a potential lottery pick on their team last year. They didn't have 4 players who could score 20 points in a game, right? So I think you have to have expectations for this team, and I think that expectation has to be somewhere around 8, 9 wins in conference play.
We're gonna come back next week to preview conference play, and I think there's gonna be a lot to talk about when we get to next week, assuming Oklahoma gets through Sunday's game against Prairie View. But not so much focusing specifically on this matchup. This should be a game
Yeah.
Oklahoma wins handedly, but closing out non-conference play, trying to get right before a pretty daunting schedule in the SEC. What are you looking for this weekend? What should fans be looking for? Is there a player, a stat, a trend? Just what are you looking for this weekend as Oklahoma closes out non-conference play?
Yeah, I'm watching Dayton Forsyth. His minutes have kind of increased in the past couple games. He's been second. I mean, against Oklahoma State, it was him and Luke Norweather who played the most off the bench. And then last game, Dayton Forsyth was second behind Glenn Taylor in bench minutes. I'm just looking, how can he keep performing in these? It's only 12 minutes for him, but it's something, right? Because I think in conference play, there's going to be some games where they need him. Just another guard, and how well does he fit in, especially on the defensive end. So against Prairie View, I'm looking at, how does he play off the bench, and what do we see from Luke Norweather and Mo Wagee? That's still something I'm watching, even though it has seemed like it's going to be matchup based. One night it'll be Norweather's night, one night it'll be Wagee's night. But I'm kind of looking at those things, just the guys off the bench, because it seems, and I'm sure you've kind of felt the same way. Last year, it was 8 guys. That's our rotation no matter what. It seems this year like it's going to be a different bench rotation night in, night out. And I'd probably like to see Bryson Goodine kind of bounce back because he was 0 for 4 from 3-point shooting against Central Arkansas. You'd like to see him, shoot a little bit better because he hasn't really had one of those games. I mean, he's had them this year, but like it feels like he could hit 3 threes in a game, and that'd be an added boost because they haven't got that in the past couple games.
Yeah, you mentioned that with the bench rotation. All of this has happened without Jadon Jones, who hasn't played this season. And
Yeah.
so, and I think it is disappointing to this point that he hasn't played, that this back injury has kept him out for so long. But you mentioned it, man, because I mean, Dayton Forsyth, he got some first half minutes against Central Arkansas. He's played, he's gotten minutes, but it doesn't feel like the rotation is as solidified as it normally is this
Yeah.
late in non-conference play under Porter Moser. And I do think there is more matchup variants that this team can do. But you're right, man, because I think even right now, if OU was to be heading into conference play right now, who would you say is getting minutes consistently? And also, who are those minutes getting to? Not to mention, again, Jadon Jones is maybe this team's best shooter, and he hasn't even played yet. Well, how does that impact the rotation?
Yeah, yeah. I think right now, the one player off the bench, and there's maybe two, but I'm like, I trust him. That's Glenn Taylor.
He's been great,
The
man.
fact that they got him in July is
He's
just
been great.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like, against Michigan, their top two players in minutes, Jeremiah Fears and Glenn Taylor, they landed in July. And you look back to that last sequence of that game, Glenn Taylor gets a steal, and then Jeremiah Fears hits the three. So he's been really good. Um, with Jadon Jones, I'm kind of done expecting him to return at any point this season. It just I don't know. I'm watching that, but I'd look at it as that those 10, Glenn Taylor, Mo Waggy, Dayton Forsyth, Luke Norweather, and Bryson Goodine as the guys we'll see off the bench for the rest of the season. But who are the eight? Like there has not been a discrete answer. It seemed like okay, Taylor, Goodine, and Norweather are going to be the first eight, but there hasn't been a situation where they've stuck to those eight in a game.
Men's basketball 12-0. Arrow only continues to point higher since last time we spoke, Brody. 12-0, 11th in the USA Today coaches poll, 12th in the AP poll. I mean, even the women's team, 11-1,
Yeah.
9th in the AP poll. I mean, they're hoops right now in Norman, man. It's arrows pointing up, dude.
Hey, the crowd was better on
Yeah.
Sunday, wasn't it? I know you were there, but I believe it was 6,000, which was better than any of the previous bye games and only 1,000 less than what they had against Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I think there's real momentum with both these programs, and I think for this men's team, I think that Michigan win
Yeah.
could prove to be a turning point in terms of fan support. I really do, but Oklahoma's just got to get past. I mean, just got to get through Sunday unscathed. And they'll head into conference play undefeated, and I think this year could be different. I think this year could potentially be special, but we'll have everybody covered the rest of the way. For Brody Lusk and I appreciate you guys hopping in and watching. As always, make sure to like and subscribe here at this OU Insider YouTube channel. If you're not a VIP, over at ouinsider.com. Never a better time to do so. Merry Christmas to everybody. We'll be back next week for another episode of In the Paint. Until then, see you guys next time.